Ironically, we also had to incur debt to pay for legislative procedures aimed at downsizing the state, advised by technical experts who were sent to us by the same credit institutions whose high salaries also came from the loans that we had to pay. In the framework of this logic, many of the so-called development projects for which funding was obtained by the country by taking external loans were implemented bearing in mind only the interests of the creditors and contractors of the projects, without considering their consequences for the natural environment or their adverse impacts on the population. This entire financial strategy, along with the greed of transnational companies, could not be carried out without the enthusiastic participation of local partners and minds anesthetized by the discourse about the end of history. The carelessness of Congress, the obsequiousness of successive government administrations and ministers of finance, the concealment of indebtedness strategies, the short-sightedness of the press, the threat of foreign investment flight, all conspired to commit what might be called the perfect crime. Nevertheless, the protest arising from the grassroots and the international community, raising questions about this rampant liberalization, brought the implementation of the present model to a halt, a model for which there are only consumers instead of citizens. We have always been told that we are a poor country with many resources, but without the capital to implement large projects, all in the name of inserting the country into a globalized world. But raw reality turned out to be quite different. Of all the loans made between 1989 and 2006, only 14% were used for development projects: clean water, energy, irrigation, transportation, telecommunications, social infrastructure, support for businesses. The remaining 86% were used to pay for previously accumulated debt. Ecuador became an exporter of capital to the detriment of the needs of its population. Continuously from 1982 to 2006, the country paid its foreign public debt creditors the amount of $119,826,000,000 for capital and interest, while receiving over the same period new loans amounting to $106,268,000,000, which means a total negative transfer of $13,558,000,000. The amount generated by the work and resources of all Ecuadorians has been mostly sent to the banks of northern countries.
A deuda se justifica quando há serviço ao país e é lógico que há que incidir algum interesse, pero o que se passou é que se contraíram deudas que não serviram ao país e que os interesses foram abusivos. E isto, direito internacional proíbe a lei de usura, ou seja, interesses que, además de remunerar o capital, significam saqueo de recursos. Isto caracteriza usura e é proibido por el direito internacional porque é abuso, é uma ilegalidade.
What development aid is being referred to here? Whose development is actually being funded here?
Puedo decir que el 80% del endeudamiento nacional ha sido incalculado, mal calculado o intencionadamente calculado en beneficio de intereses no nacionales.
The country cannot ignore that debt has branded millions of persons with the indelible mark of migration, poverty, and the loss of confidence in their own skills, in addition to severe impacts on nature. We have to know who benefited from this tragedy, because impunity, sooner or later, shall only allow this to happen again.
Es importantísimo que las ciudadanías de todos nuestros países tomen conciencia y sepan la verdad sobre la cuestión de la deuda. No se lo van a decir ni los periódicos ni la televisión. Tiene que haber una forma de romper esta barrera de silencio para que se tome conciencia. Y solamente así se generará la fuerza política para cambiar la situación. Yo veo con alegría que en Ecuador está ocurriendo, se está cayendo el velo de ignorancia a raíz de lo que está realizando la Comisión de Auditoría de la Deuda. Ojalá ese ejemplo pueda ir a otros países también.
We want to know why this aggressive indebtedness took place and the destination of this money. There are conclusive indications that this debt was illegitimate, unethical, and impossible to pay. And the protest of national and international social and citizen organizations has led the Ecuadorian government to order a comprehensive audit of all domestic and foreign debt processes to determine how the loans were made, how their funds were spent, what social, economic, environmental impacts they had, and how our sovereignty as a nation was violated.
Basta de saqueo e basta de no acesso à verdade. O hallazgo mais importante da auditoria é o acesso à verdade. Verdade que a gente que está pagando esta deuda, que está pagando todos os dias com seu sacrifício, paga quando busca um serviço de saúde e não encontra, quando busca educação e não encontra, quando não tem segurança, quando não tem emprego, quando não tem vivienda, quando não tem futuro, expectativa de futuro para seus ninhos. Isto é pago de deuda. Esta gente que paga tem, em lo mínimo, o direito de saber o que está pagando. E tem direito de saber a verdade.
We would like to know why millions of families have been so severely affected by a debt incurred by the ambitions of banks, fallacious development aid schemes, the complicity of local partners in these schemes, and submissive governments. For coming generations and for the dignity that the country must restore to its citizens, let us all support the debt audit and the decisions taken by the government to have human life prevail over debt.